So, Nichole, thank you for joining us here at the Pro Speaker Summit. I wanted to have you on because your main business isn't just speaking, even though speaking is a large part of it. Your main business is as an attorney, and you use your voice as a way to build your legal business, but also you still get paid for giving speeches too. So you're not saying, I'm speaking for free to just build this. No, you're like, I'm going to do both of them, right? So I want to always start off with the origin story. When did you become this superhero, Nichole Compton, Nichole Shelton?
Oh, wow. Um, I've always been, I've always been a healer. I want to fix things that don't seem right. So, I got pregnant at 15. 2 days after my 16th birthday, I had my son. I was told that I wasn't gonna, even though I was the top of my class, I was the first cellist in the orchestra. I was a chess player and all those good things. Everybody, including my parents, my counselors, my teachers, I became a liability, and nobody thought that I was going to graduate. I graduated. I graduated top of my class and went to college. And when I got to college, I realized there were other teen moms like me who needed to know that it could be done. And so I asked my counselor if she would call an all class assembly for all the students so that I could come in and tell the teenage moms at the teenage parent program where I was sent that they didn't want to just get their GEDs, that they could go to college. And so one of the ladies who worked at the school, she had been a teen mom. She was a former teen mom, and her son went on to become a PhD in finance. And his brother was kind of like his promoter. They started a speakers bureau. And so she was like, you have to meet my son. I want him to meet you. He met me. He heard my story. He heard me speak, and the rest is history. And so I've always used my voice to help people. But at the age of 18, I had a massive opportunity that took me down a whole different path that I didn't even know was possible for me. And so, yes, I'm an attorney by trade. And I know you said Compton and Shelton. So just to clear that up, put it all on the table. So I had been Compton for over 20 years because of my first husband that I met in college. We got a divorce, and I told him I was going to be like Tina Turner. I took all the debt and I took my name, and I told him I'm going to make it great because I had already started my law firm. I was already speaking under that name and branded, and it ran for judge. I got divorced in the middle of the first election. And so it's been Compton for 20 years. But I met my unicorn. The unicorn is that magical, wonderful creature that you don't think exists until you see one and you're like, you do exist. And so I married my unicorn. Well, his last name is Shelton. So officially I'm Nichole Shelton. But my stage name, like Tina Turner, is Nichole Compton. That's what people know me by. That's what, people see me on the street or, remember me from my TV show. That's what they know. So I go by either. Sometimes I just say, I'm just Nichole.
All right, that's cool, man. Well, at least you have a way to explain why your last name is what it is. For
Well, I
me,
tell people, even names are important, but if you can't remember, it's that one attorney speaker.
well, they don't even think my last name is real. You got to imagine somebody with the last name Story that, yeah, it's like, come on, man, who divinely inspired this, right?
Yep.
So they don't even believe my name is real. At least they believe yours, right? So let's talk.
Straight out of Compton.
I can imagine.
And I'm that feisty.
Ron Story, Tell Me a Story, Ronald McDonald. I've heard it all. Right?
Oh.
I've heard it all. I used to get called Arnold from Different Strokes instead of Ronald.
No.
You remember Gary Coleman?
Yes.
they would call me Arnold.
And yeah, that was not as fitting.
But it's because my name is Ronald.
Yeah.
Right. So, but no, I get it. So let's talk about it a little bit. I want to understand how you use speaking to grow your business. But how did you started speaking at 18? Like, that's really young. Because a lot of times I'm like, dude, like 18, I ain't really got no life experience. What am I going to tell someone? But you did have that life experience that could help people. Let's talk about that a little bit.
My dad said that I never played. It's like everybody else was playing with baby dolls and you was having one. Everybody else was playing with their little cash register and you were starting businesses. And so that is true. Um, I'm probably light years ahead of where I should be. But so I view speaking, it started out, like I said, I'm a natural healer. I want to fix things. I see problems, I want to see solutions. That's what an entrepreneur is. That's probably why I got my MBA in entrepreneurship and I help entrepreneurs, is because, I know that entrepreneurs see problems and we fix them. Speaking is a great way. There's tons of books. I'm a nerd. I got millions of books, and I get that from my dad. But I can't go through every single book every day. Like, most people want to be entertained or they want that connection. And so to be able to speak, they can see my personality. They can see, ooh, she crazy. That's the sister girl in the law. That's Nikki. But the things that I say and the connections that I make from the stage or in a group, they resonate with people and it makes things stick. So I can take complex ideas and break them down into really relatable analogies and stories and things that tidbits that people can take and they can use. As far as using it for business, um, I've been an adjunct professor, so I naturally want to teach. Being a mother for so many years, you have to learn how to break things down and teach. So those are tools that I've used over the years, but they're relatable to, are able to use in speaking. And so what ends up happening, I can go speak on what I call a touchy feely subject. So one of my speeches is permission granted. And so I'm going and talking about I'm giving you the permission. You remember the green, well, ours were green, permission slips that you used to get in school to go on a field trip. So I liken a lot of things in my speech to that permission slip. But so many times as adults, we don't give ourselves permission to live fully, to take chances, to fail, and things like that. So it has nothing to do with law. But I'll go give a speech like that and people hear, oh, you're an attorney. So then the next thing, a lot of people don't really interact with an attorney unless you're a paralegal or you work in the court. So they remember, oh, she's an attorney. So when they need an attorney, then they call. Even if I'm halfway across the world giving a speech, somebody will remember. They'll look me up and say, well, do you do this kind of law? And if I don't, then I direct them to my directory of attorneys that I created. Or I go down my Rolodex and I see, okay, who can I put you with that I know understands your needs and they're going to do you right or treat you like I would treat you as an attorney. And so it actually works out. Sometimes I get those clients that hear me speak and they are my people. They're my audience for my business that I am looking to help. They're the entrepreneur who's looking to pivot, or they're the highly educated professional, the executive, the attorney, the dentist, the doctor, who realized that they were sold a dream and they have all this expertise and they have these degrees, but they really want to do something different. And so I help them find what business idea works for them, help them transition into being a business owner and entrepreneur. And then I load them down with all the tools and the knowledge that I have as an attorney and as a business advisor and as a certified tax advisor. I put all of that together so that they can have a viable, prosperous business. And so speaking is just one way to get my name out there, one way to connect with people, and one way to solve some of the problems that I see in the world.
So, what are some of the basics? Because some people are speakers currently, right? And we're going to approach this from two perspectives. Some
Okay.
people, some of our audience is speakers who need a product. The other ones are people with a product that want to learn how to speak. So I want to look at both sides of that because you've done both of them. A lot of our other speakers at this conference have only done one, but you've seen both sides, right? So let's start with the person who's a speaker currently and they want to build their first product. What would be your advice?
See, and I think it's easier to do it the other way around, but we'll start with speakers because that's actually how I started. I was in college. I didn't have a business except for dibbling, dabbling and, making baskets and selling those to friends and things like that. If you're a speaker and you're looking to come up with a product, it's really, you have to figure out, and you should have already figured out who your target audience is. what the problem it is that you solve for them and a pain point. And I know, I hear those keywords all the time. So after a while, you feel like, okay, they're saying the same thing over and over. In my situation, I'll give my first speech as an example. I went back and I talked to teen moms and told them that they could go to school. How I would productize that is to come up with maybe a VIP boot camp on the weekend where they can come and not have daycare for the, have childcare for the kids or activities for the kids. And we actually talk through what it would look like and maybe work through a vision board of what they want their life to look like. I had a speech called The Economics of Education that talked about how much you made if you finished high school and went to college or got a professional degree versus or a trade or not. And so maybe we would work through that. And so finding something that's complementary to what you speak on that actually takes it one step further. As a speaker, most times you're allotted 2 hours. You're allotted 20 minutes to an hour. I've never, like for a regular speech, you're not going to hold anybody's attention for 2 hours in like in a keynote setting. But in a one-on-one workshop, then it works. In the 20 minutes to an hour, you can only give so much. You can only talk about at max 3 different things, 3 different bullet points. But having a product that allows them to experience the fullness of what you have to offer so that they know that your breadth is not just those 3 points, but that you can really, go in on those. You may also, I've seen there's all kind of products that you could create. So it could be like a checklist to apply to college, the 10 things you need to know to apply to college. And here's a checklist to go with it. And maybe a quick video on explaining each bullet point. Those are some really, really easy ideas to come up with for that. For someone who already has a product, you have it the easiest. If you want to speak and you already have a product, what are you going to talk about? Your product. But you have to do it in a way that's not tooting your own horn or just selling. People want to buy naturally. They do, but they don't want to be sold to. So you don't want to turn them off. So being able to explain to them, how your product actually works, or coming up with the scenario or somebody that you've helped and telling their story makes it really, really easy for you to sell your stuff on the back end. And you don't even have to say, I got the solution. I got this product over here. You can say, this is what happened. One example I gave when I taught on how to do lead magnets was the emergency situation. I didn't come in and say, I got everything that you need on how to do this. In my presentation, what I said was, you're a speaker and you step out, you just got that call. It's the last minute. Somebody's calling you for this mega podcast. And they're like, hey, we want you to be on our podcast later this afternoon or first thing in the morning because our other person that we had booked isn't there and we think you'd be perfect. And you're during the headlights. Oh my God, what do I do? And so just even starting out to tell that story is like, okay, well, if I was in that situation, this is what I would do. And so I ended up walking them through, this is how you do it, without necessarily saying, I got a product, you should buy mine. It has all these 10 flavors and all of these 10 things that are great about it. So I think it makes it a whole lot easier if you have something that already solves the problem. So the person with the product is actually in a little better situation than the person who speaks. But neither one of them should complicate it, because writing a book, making a podcast, coming up with checklists, doing a webinar or a workshop, those things are things that are monetizable that you don't have. Even starting a community group. If you're a speaker and you're like, I don't want to write a book, I don't have the time, or I don't feel like I, want to do a full course on what I teach, start a community. Just start interacting, get people into your community, start talking to them. What you'll find out is eventually you'll find your product because somebody's going to ask you, well, it's nice that I'm in this community, but I was wondering if you would be willing to help me with this. And then you say, oh, okay, well, what's that worth to you? I got what you need. You let me know this is about what I'm thinking to charge, and you talk it through. But even having a community is having a product.
Yeah, I think I like how you describe that, because what I take from that is when you're speaking, you're talking about the what and the why, right? Attorneys are really good at that. Hey, you need a will. Here's why.
Yep.
They never tell you how. They sell the how, right? And I think a lot of speakers, especially when they're beginning, because they don't have the confidence, they're giving you the what, the why, and the how in their speech, so they have nothing left to sell, or their speech gets into kind of feeling like you're talking down to people, or you start sounding like a professor because you're getting into the how on the stage. And how is for teaching, right?
Yeah.
That's the class, that's the
Most
course, the
people don't
workshop.
want to, they need to know the how, but what they want is the result. So
Mhm.
last night I was craving brownies. If I wanted brownies, then I want to go either buy the brownies or I want to be able to pull the box out and make it. I don't need you giving me the history of brownies. I don't need you telling me, well, the reason why we put eggs in it is because the eggs make it do. I don't need that. I don't want that. Get me the quickest to my brownies that you can, because I'm getting hangry. And so
Yeah.
it's that they don't want to know. With attorneys, we can't necessarily. I learned that. I learned that as a young attorney, because for attorneys, we have to be careful, because even a conversation, when you ask the attorney for free advice, they're already on the hook. You're putting their bar license on the line. They have something to lose. So when they say, I can't answer that, or they tell you schedule an appointment, don't be offended, because this is why. But I had a client who, when I was a younger attorney, he came in and I said, well, this sucks. That happened. Oh, and that happened. Well, according to this law, we can fight this. And based on this is usually how the courts rule. And so I'm going to go in tomorrow and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And he didn't need to know. He did not need to know how it was made. So what happens is the client goes in. At that time, my son was in the hospital. He was getting discharged. They discharged like around right before I was supposed to go to court. So I've already called the court. They know that I'm on my way. My client gets impatient. So he figures, she gave me the recipe. I'm going to go in and represent myself. You said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. And so he went in and he did X, Y, and Z without really knowing why. He didn't have the $300,000 degree or the years of experience or even the rapport with the court to know what to say and not say. He ended up losing contact with his children, getting a domestic violence order that should have like there was no domestic violence. He wasn't even there, but getting all of these orders entered on him. And that was my aha, that I hurt him more than I helped him in that situation. Now it became my first case that went up to the Court of Appeals, and they actually did a written opinion. For attorneys, that's a big thing. To have something overturned and get a written opinion from the Court of Appeals, it's like, 1 in 100,000 or 1 in 10,000 attorneys or whatever that actually can say that happened, to have a published opinion. So it worked out in the end, because I'm a fighter and I don't quit. But I hurt him because I gave him all the stuff he didn't need to know. He needed to know what happened. Yeah, you know that. We understand why it happened, because the law says this and this is what it looks like. All the how I was going to do it, he didn't need to know. He needed to pay the money and then I would get him the results. So you got
Yeah,
to think about it like that.
I think that's really important, because you can develop products around that, right?
Yeah.
So you can have they heard your speech, but you can have the book where you've written out the how. You can have a course where you talk them through the how, right?
Yep.
You can have a done with you coaching program where you're watching them do the how and you're saying, hey, nah, you got to take the egg yellow out the egg white first.
Right.
That's on purpose. You skip that part, right? Or you could sell the full thing and the price goes up with each one.
Yes.
And I think with productization, sometimes we don't think about that. We think about, I want to sell either the smallest thing because I just want to get somebody to give me $5, or I want to sell the biggest thing, which probably
Sometimes
nobody
you
can
need the
afford, you know?
$5 for the confidence and to get the momentum. Because when you get those little dings from PayPal and Stripe and somebody brought your thing for $5, it feels good. Don't stay at the $5 because that's not like that's so hard. It takes the same amount of effort to sell the $5 that it would take to sell the $500 product. And so you do have to be very smart in what you put into it, how much you're giving. And if it's a done for you, that's a premium product. If it's a done with you, that's a semi premium product. If it's a do it yourself and you're handing it, what we have to realize is in the day of ChatGPT and Claude and all of the other ones, is that information truly is now a dime a dozen or $20 a month, or you can use the free version. So you can Google and ChatGPT research like everything that you need to know and have it distill it down for you in 20 minutes. The thing is, you got to find that angle that ChatGPT isn't given. ChatGPT and Google can't stand on the stage and deliver. They can't give your experiences, the experiences that you've gotten for your clients and your audiences. They can't make us feel like that. And this last release of of Google and Gemini, they're getting close, but they can't be you. So yours is special and unique, and how you do it is special or unique. So don't stay at the you don't want to necessarily stay at the do it yourself and the information products. If you can, you want to be able to really put your stank on it. You want to add to it so that it's yours.
No, that makes sense. I get it. As you were talking about that, it brought up a point that I was thinking about, which is it's like Mercedes. Everybody knows Mercedes as a luxury car, right?
Yep.
But if you look at the lower line Mercedes, they got the same features as a Kia, right? But as you go up, you start with the A class, and then you go to the C class, and then the E, and then the S, and then the AMGs, and then the Maybach, right?
Yep.
You don't really get into the full luxury until you spend $300,000,
Yeah.
right? Like that's every luxury item we've ever thought about, right?
But everybody's not buying those either. So
and that's why they have that.
Right. Some people, the ones that can afford it, and if you're selling to the elite or the higher, I don't want to say higher, I guess it is the higher working class or not working class. If you're
People with
selling
higher
to
budgets.
higher budgets, they expect more, but it's easier for them to pay. You can't sell a $50,000 course to someone who their entire year's salary is $35,000 and they got kids. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't match. That doesn't mean you can't help them. That doesn't mean you can't have an A-class package for them. They're just not going to get the AMG. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So that's the person that's a speaker and they're trying to develop a course. Let's look at it from the other side, where it's the person, I already have my business. I'm already an accountant. I'm already a lawyer. I'm already a consultant. I'm already a fitness coach. I'm already something where I'm using my knowledge as the product. Or even if it's a physical product, how has speaking been different than one-on-one selling? Because you get to present to 50 people versus one.
So I've gotten to the point I hate doing one-on-one calls, and that's my personality, but it's also because for me, because I know what I'm about to say. One to many makes so much more sense. Right now, I can have a phone conversation or do a one-on-one Zoom with a prospective client, and that client may or may not buy. So it's a 50-50 for me. I can take that same batch of knowledge, that same conversation, and put it on a podcast or do a YouTube video, and 200,000 people see it, and they don't have to see it in real time. I can say it and put it out there, and then it lives on. For in-person speaking, what you find is that if somebody made a connection and you're real, you're not a face on the screen, You're not the picture that's on the back of the book that they never met. You know, if you're somebody they met, especially if you're somebody they met and you have a book, so they're signing it or whatever, they're excited. I got a piece of what they have. And to them, you come with automatic credibility and authority, and they're there to listen to you. So you
Mhm.
got their attention. You don't even have to wonder if they're interested because you're going to be able to tell as you're speaking. But what happens is when you find something, like if I find a good deal, I'm like, girl, you know what? You need to go down to Macy's because they got suits on sale, like, and they are some fast suits. I want to tell everybody if I go to a training or go to a keynote and I'm like, I'm coming home, babe, let me tell you about this speaker that I just met and what they said. It blew my mind. I know it's going to blow yours. So then he goes and he looks them up. Or I've had opportunities where I've given a speech. It could have been a free speech, somewhere that I didn't really plan on speaking, and I got up and I spoke. And then the next thing you know, I get somebody else who asked me, "Hey, my company, my group, they need to hear what you just said. Can you come talk to us too?" So now that one speech, instead of being a one-on-one phone call where that person may or may not buy, that person may or may not do anything with what you showed them, now you have a full audience, and it's growing exponentially, and you don't even, it's working for you when you don't even realize it's working for you. You got people that are speaking your names in other rooms that you've never been in, but you will end up in because you were able to speak and to help. So that's why I said it's much easier if you already have your product, you already know what you do and what you offer. Now, what I will say is be clear on what you offer and have good follow up for when you do get leads or somebody, if you go speak, you always want to see if you can get the list or the names of the people who are there, or find a way to share your information with them in return for their information or something like that. That's where lead magnets come in. But you want to be able to know who was in the audience, because a big part of it is follow up. Most people, they go, they speak, and they all get a trickle, but you get so much more than a trickle if you follow up afterwards, or you can share something with them after the experience, because statistics show that 45 minutes to an hour after you've heard a speech, if there were 3 points in the speech, you may be able to get one. You'd be like, what's that one attorney speaker, but and that's even if you were perfect. That's even if there was a true connection. So being able to speak in person helps because you're doing it once, but depending on the platform or the stage, is going to live on. And the more you do it, so accountants and attorneys are good at selling, even if they don't realize they're good at selling, because that's what our consultations are. Find out what the problem is, diagnose it, and figure out what a treatment is. So a lot of times people are better than selling than what they realize. But if you can stand up on a stage and say it, then you have to be really clear. You have to be, because you bomb the first time, it hurts. You bomb the second time, it hurts more. But after that pain hits, if you keep going, you're going to get better, because you're going to be like, ooh, I shouldn't have said it that way. Or I saw how they looked at me kind of crazy when I made that last point. Maybe I should have made it this way. So there's a constant improvement. And as a business owner, as someone who has a product that's selling something, you have to have communication skills, because you have to communicate what it is that you offer.
I think that's really important, because we don't think of it as group selling a lot of times. We think of it as kind of a performance, right? So how does someone who's
No.
who's never given a speech before, right? How do they understand that, hey, I don't have to write a new speech for everything? Um, let's walk through that, because a lot of the business owners, someone told them that they should be a speak, that hey, you should speak, you can get more clients, but they don't know where to start, and they're terrible. So what's the base? Like, if you were giving advice to me as a new business owner, I want to learn how to speak to sell my product. What's the first thing I should do?
Get what you're trying to get across down to one sentence and 3 points. That's the
Good.
biggest thing. Add a story on there if you know some facts or you've had some, like such and such a percent of people who do this get this. Like if you can add something, some psychological uh, points in there, then that helps. The biggest, the biggest thing that I can say, and probably why, I've spoken to stadiums of, to entire college campuses in their auditorium. I've spoken to small groups, and done workshops for companies that only have 20 employees in the room. Talk to them like you were talking to your best friend. You don't have to be over professional. Attorneys are really good at legalese and using big terms that people don't understand. The average person, sorry to say, has the vocabulary of a sixth grader. Like, it works for me because I'm raising my 10-year-old grandson. So, how I would bend down and talk to him, like Nana said, and you do this, and then we do, you have to, don't talk down to them, but make it as simple as you can that they can understand and have a conversation. Have a conversation. Find, if you know somebody in the audience, talk to them, break and look around the room, but talk like you're talking to them. Hey, Ron, have you ever had such and such happen? Man, I have to. Let me tell you about this one time and go into it. If you overcomplicate it and you over prepare, I guarantee you'll mess up because that adds the pressure. I know for me, I've had speeches where I've written out every word and I've practiced it. And, as a younger speaker, when I would get on stage and I knew that I missed a line, nobody else knew. It still made sense without that one sentence. Nobody else, but then I'm frazzled because I forgot that one sentence. That comes from over preparing. But if you know your product, because you do it every day or you are your product, there should never be that. You should be able to have a conversation. So essentially, every time you take the stage, it should be a conversation. Granted, it's a conversation that may have 200 or 3,000 people listening to it. But if you treat them like it's them and you're just talking to them, they're going to feel like you were just talking to them. And that, being genuine like that and being, human makes all the difference in the world. So you don't over prepare. You need to have, what I always think about is, if I had to tell them everything I needed to tell them in one sentence, what would that sentence be? And build out from there. And what story can I use? I use a lot of stories and a lot of analogies, just because I can tell you, there's a red folder on the desk in the other room, or I can take a moment and describe it, say, can you imagine if you walked in and it was a desk filled with papers and there was just stacks like this and there was this, and then your eyes went straight, it was just drawn to it like it was calling you. There was a red folder right there. That is going to make you be like, oh, you're coming in because you want to know. You're building the picture in your head. And because you have that picture in your head, you're more likely to remember than me just saying, and in the red folder is the winning lottery tickets. Like, so don't overcomplicate it. Tell a story, be able to say it in one sentence, and then have no more than 3 bullet points. Bullet number 1, the folder is important because bullet number 2, when you get the folder, make sure you do this with it. And bullet number 3, don't forget X, have it that no more than 3. People who try to give you, the whole encyclopedia, the who, what, when, where, how, why, and then some, that's when you're going to mess up. So stop overcomplicating it. Everybody should be able to have a conversation. And I don't try to look at people and think that they're naked things. Like, I don't want to see. That's not what I'm going to do. But also know that they realize that you're human. And sometimes I've had moments where I may have misspoke or even messed up on purpose because that made me human. And so it kind of brings the tone down. If I say something and I got to laugh at myself, and then that makes them laugh, and they're like, oh, she's a well-accomplished attorney with all these credentials and experience, but she's just like me. What she did? Oh man, when she tripped on the stage, she stopped and laughed and had a joke about it, and so don't overcomplicate it. Be you, be human, and to the point.
No, I like that. So if I had to sum that up, this is what I heard. You mentioned when you were beginning, you wrote out every sentence and every word, and it made you nervous, right? And what I heard was start with an outline and stories that you can tell comfortably, right? And as you're telling those stories, over time, you will edit those stories down and get them right.
Yeah.
And there's a Benjamin Franklin quote that I love that says, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter, right? And I get that because I think of comedians like Chris Rock. Chris Rock did a comedy show where it was recorded in 4 different countries. Wow. But they edited it and he had on different clothes, but he would tell the same joke and he uses the same words in all 4 different countries. Like it's that crisp that he's gotten it down. But we didn't see the 8,000 times he told that joke when it had all the fat on it, and then he edited it down to where he says, this is the final version. But it was all those other practices. He wasn't perfect the first time. He told it, took some of the stuff out, told it again, took some of the stuff out,
and
told it again.
I bet you he's still adding to it. Because he'll pick something else up, or he'll say it and be like, oh man, 10 years ago, I should have said this joke like that. Or nowadays, this joke needs this. It has to be living. It's not going to be perfect. Even when you wrote it and you thought it was perfect, there was something that you missed. I've had that happen. I try to at least practice my speech before I take the stage, even if it's an impromptu speech. In my head, I'm going to the bathroom and I'm saying it to the mirror so I can hear it and see. But I had a time when I was about to give this huge keynote. It was a big deal. And so before I flew out, I had some people listen to what I said and I tried to change it at the last minute. Did it work? It did. And it added a little bit to it. But it was enough to frazzle me that I lost a day that I could have done something else and focused something else. It wasn't that big of a deal that I should have been freaking out like I was. And so it comes naturally because you'll be on the stage and you'll misspeak and be like, that sounded better. Or somebody, get a loved one to watch it with you or be in the audience and they be like, man, but you should have said. My brother does comedy. Not because he's a comedian, but they have open mic nights and I like going. But I'm writing, taking notes, like next time, say it like this. You gotta say it with your chest, So it can't be, I'll just say this, it can't be perfect. It will never be perfect. Don't let it be perfect. And the day that it's perfect, then you need to abandon ship because that means you can't pivot, you won't grow. And there's always room for improvement. Always.
No, I like that. So I think that's sound advice, especially for new speakers and business owners that are getting into speaking. Don't be so hard on yourself, right? Yeah. Give yourself the time and the repetitions. It's kind of like, I think new speakers are kind of like when I watch my son, he likes soccer, right? Every day he's showing me a new soccer trick that he can't even do right. I mean, it don't look nothing like
he must be like my grandbaby.
Yeah, he's a kid, right?
Yeah.
So, at 8, he sees it on YouTube and he thinks he looks like the dude on YouTube, but he can't see outside himself to realize he ain't doing none of that stuff that dude was doing on YouTube. But if he keeps practicing for the next 5 to 10 years, he will get that trick right. Yeah. And so I think another thing that I took from what you were saying was give yourself time. Give yourself time and repetitions.
And grace. Give yourself grace. It's
grace.
In my permission granted, the last permission is the permission to fail. You are not going to ever be successful if you do not fail. Everybody looks at overnight successes. You look at the Les Browns and the Lisa Nichols and all of that, and you're like, wow, I can never speak like them. I don't have any stories. My life ain't like theirs. But no, it's not. And give yourself grace because I guarantee you what you didn't see was Les Brown sleeping in the building. sleeping in his office building, taking baths in the sink in the bathroom because he had a dream and he was working. We see the success that comes afterwards, and we're like, oh man, I could never do that. No, you can't do it if you don't fail. You cannot do it if you don't fail. It has to be, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. Well, that didn't work. Let me do this. Well, I should have said it like that. I'll get it right next time. You got to fail, but give yourself some grace.
100%. Les has 50 years of stories.
Yeah.
I ain't been living 50 years. So I can't,
Right. Well,
of course I'm not as good as Les.
well, but you have more. Here's the thing. My husband, for our 1-year wedding anniversary, bought me a picture of, it was the family on the beach after the wedding. We were all standing and it had 1,000 pieces. I was so frustrated. I like puzzles and I'm really quick with them. This one took me a couple of months, but I put it on this big sheet of paper as I was doing it. And I started writing on the edge the lessons that I learned from doing this puzzle. Everybody can't help me with my puzzle because they don't have the vision. They put the pieces in the wrong place. You got to start on the outside because you got to have the framework before you fill in the middle. Like I wrote a whole speech off of doing a puzzle. Like you do have the experiences. So I had written it down a second ago while you were talking. The nugget that I want to give on that is don't take for granted what you do know. People tell me, Nikki, you're a walking encyclopedia. If I want to know something that has to do with business, creating wealth, money, legal, like I'm coming to you. Even how do I make something on Canva? Because I'm also a techie. So they're like, how do I use AI? How do I make something on Canva? And then they come to me and I'm like, oh yeah, you just do this. Let me show you right here. Because I take for granted everything that I know, everything that I can teach. And so I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of clients that I work with as a business advisor who take for granted what they know. Yeah, well, I got this, I'm offering this, I have this phone system, but everybody's got phones out here. What makes mine different? They play their self down. Or they may speak on emotional intelligence. Well, nobody understands what emotional intelligence is. Maybe it's not relevant, or maybe what I'm teaching everybody knows. They may be able to look it up, but they don't know it like you know it. Their experiences and their stories and how they show it and how they share it isn't you. So I may be the outlet to your plug. You may be my plug. You may have exactly what I need and say it in a way that oh my God, I've heard this 20 times. And it wasn't until you said it that the lights came on because the plug fit. So don't take for granted what it is that you know, what it is that you speak about, or what it is that you sell and how you can present to people. Don't take that for granted.
I accept that. I really do. Because I think sometimes things that are common to us, we think it's common to everybody.
Right.
Right. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for my lesson. I got my lesson the other day. We can go ahead and end this. No, I'm just kidding.
Always do for me. So I'm like, yep, I'm glad I could help.
No, that makes sense. So there's something that you said like 4 times already. And I don't want to get off before we get done talking about this.
Okay.
You mentioned this concept of permission granted, right? And what just keeps coming up in my mind is, dude, how often do we look for permission from people who don't even know we're looking for permission, right? We're looking for somebody to knight us valid. We don't even know we're looking for that validation. Can you go in a little bit more about this permission granted thing? Because it won't go away. It won't go away in my mind. It just keeps staying there.
Because if you wait for permission, you'll never get it. Nobody is looking. 2, people who give you permission frame it in what they can or cannot do. So when I talk like permission granted, my speech, the first one is to do it and live life your way. When I was younger, I got divorced after my first campaign. It was really public because my husband had a really great job at the time and everybody knew him. They knew the mistress, and she was even on the front page of the newspaper pregnant. Like, it was bad. And I got finished with that election and I lost, and I felt like I hit a brick wall. And I remember I was like, Florida is my happy place. I want to live in Florida, but I'm barred in Kentucky. But I want to live in Florida. So I packed everything up in my little SUV. I took a couple $1,000s and I moved to Florida. I didn't have a place. I didn't know. I knew about the city that I wanted to be in. Didn't really care what neighborhood it was. I was going to do it. But I remember before I left, there was an older lady at the hair shop, and she was in her curler sitting under the dryer. And she heard me talking about moving, and she leans in because she was meddling. She leans in, "Oh, honey, you can't do that." But what I found out from talking to her is she had never been more than Cincinnati, which is like 100 miles or less away. Her entire life, this was somebody who was like in their 80s, and she had never traveled. So yeah, she can't see me traveling 1,000 miles away. Well, I moved, and before this is pre-COVID, so that I was using Zoom and some other tools to do everything virtually. I flew home to come to court for my cases every week because I found a cheap airline, and I lived in Florida. And it was about a year in, when attorneys realized that's what I was doing. And they were like, "Oh, you cannot do that. That's not traditional. And that's not the right way." And all of this good stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. I've been doing it for a year. My clients are happy. I'm winning my cases. Like, I'm making money, and I'm happy living in the place that I want to live. And you told me that I couldn't do it because you framed it in what you could or couldn't do. So if you're waiting on somebody else to validate you, they won. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, and I'm a believer, I'm a Christian. So at the end of the day, I got to stand before God and be like, yep, I used all the talents, all the time, everything that you gave me, 100%. I didn't waste a bit. I don't want to get there and be like, well, I was still like, I know that you gave me the gift to help people and to build businesses and to win cases. But I mean, I was saving those because I was waiting to see if I was really allowed to do it the way that I thought. No. And sorry. And the thing that's even worse about it, is not only were my clients happy in that scenario, and I was happy, and the money was coming in, and life was good. 10 years later, COVID hits, and now everybody's doing a virtual practice and doing things with Zoom and online, and now nobody's looking like, oh my God. So now I'm a trailblazer because I'm like, hey, let me show you what you need to do, because I did that 10 years ago. I can tell you what works and what doesn't work. Why? I gave myself the permission to live fully. And guess what? It may happen, it may not. But one of my things that I always say in any speech, and I've taught my son since he was a baby, I tell him, and I tell everybody, that every moment of every second of every day, you can change. You can change who you are, what you are. You can about face and do a 180. So you know what? If you go out there and you do it without permission and you mess up, guess what? Fix it. Go back to what you were doing. Just switch it back. Everything's fixable. Almost everything. Almost everything's fixable. But if you do hit on something, then run with it and build. But you can't, nobody who is successful was sitting around waiting on somebody else to be like, yeah, I validate your decision. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. You can go ahead and do that, because then you're always under their thumb. Then you can only go as high as what they can see themselves going. So bump that. Give yourself permission to roll with it. One of the stories, I'll give you another story, and it comes from that speech too. I'm working on my pilot's license. I own a plane and don't have a pilot's license. That's nuts. And so I need to get my pilot's license. But the first lesson I ever took was on my 30th birthday, and I am now 45, about to turn 46 this month. And I still don't have that license. But last year, when we bought the plane, I had my second lesson, 15 years after the first one. So we're in the plane, and the guy, we don't do the pre-check, we don't took off. He's done everything, and I'm just kind of looking around and enjoying. And he turns around, he said, "Okay, Nichole, you take the controls." Excuse me? I'm like, "What you talking about, Willis?" Because you lost your mind. You have lost your mind. I'm about to kill us. And he was like, take it. There is nothing that you can do that I can't correct. There's nothing that you're not going to crash this plane, because there's nothing that you can do that I can't fix. So go ahead and try. And I was like, oh. Then although I still thought he was crazy, I took the stick and I was like, oh my God. I flew for 30 or 40 minutes. I landed the plane, and I'm not really good on taxiing because you have to use both feet. There's no steering. You use your feet. Apparently my feet ain't as coordinated as they need to be. But I got us back to the hangar, parked the plane, turned it off, and was like, because before he told me, try it, I was doubting myself. And the only permission that he gave me, so if you're going to take somebody's permission, take this one. The only permission he gave me was the permission to fail. And guess what? I failed. I had the permission to fail, and I didn't. I flew instead. I soared. I succeeded.
No, that's incredible.
And I taught myself that I can do this. So the next flight, I wasn't like this. I was like, hey, I got my instructor. So I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna see what I can do. Next time I was the one that took off and did the radio calls to, so if you're gonna take anybody's permission, take mine. I'm giving you the permission to fail. Permission granted.
No, that's pretty dope. That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, we got such a similar story. I took a lesson 15 years ago and never went back, and I want to do it. So maybe I need to buy a plane too. So that it forces me to go.
The mortgage on the plane is a great incentive to not leave it sitting in the hangar.
Yeah, maybe I need to do that. So you know what? You brought up a couple of things, and we'll close with this because I think it's interesting. You mentioned that you were a Christian and you didn't want to get in front of God, and we hear that all the time. Especially most speakers are Christians who didn't want to be pastors in reality.
I was told when I was a kid, I was an evangelist and a prophetess. I had a prophetess come to church on a tent service and told me that. And I was like, yeah, I'm not the pastor play, but I am a prophetess and an evangelist. And I do help people, and I bless people with my words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just not.
I don't have to be turned to Psalms 39. I don't have to do that. I speak life because I speak real life, and I speak solutions. And I believe, being a believer, I believe that Christ roamed the earth. What was he doing? Helping and healing people and talking to people. He wasn't giving, huge sermons, thou shalt not. No, he was like, let me break it down to you. This is all you need. This is what you need to know.
No, that makes sense. Because that's what I think. I hear it a lot. I hear I'm waiting on what God tells me, right?
And God's waiting on you. He said, I gave you everything that pertains to life and health and godliness. So you figure it out. And life came, I gave you everything that pertains to life, and life came first. So that this is this world. So if you did, he gave you your talents. He had a plan for you. And you know what my pastor had told me at one point, and this is before I moved to Florida. I checked it with my pastor. He said he's there too. And he told me, he said, if you take the step and it's not the right way and you really are a believer, he's going to be like, nah, baby girl, hold on. Or that door is going to close, but then you're going to see this bright, shiny door over here. That client ain't going to work out because he didn't mean you any good. But the one that had the big contract for you is sitting right there waiting. But if you're stagnant and you never start taking the steps, you never get there. And even in the Bible, he says, I'm a light unto your foot. You're like, he's giving you your next step. He's shining the flashlight on your next step. Because just like we talked about earlier, he gave you the what and the why. He didn't give you this is how you do it. And this is, he told you, take a step. Okay, now take this one. Now go here. And that's all you need to do. So that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out.
That makes sense. I'm going to put that in my notes.
Know.
Jesus is not Montel Jordan. This is how you do it.
And there's a lot of times I pray for discernment and wisdom, and I'm like, Lord, make it plain. And this year has been one of those years in trying to pivot and do more in corporate, because it's like, I've been doing this. I've done that. This is a stretch, and I've done it on some levels, but I want to do it on this level. And so I'm looking for everybody to tell me like, okay, but I did mine this way. I did mine that way. And I realize how they're going to do it may not be mine. I want to be strategic. There are certain things that work. If I never send the email and ask, if I never pick up the phone call, if I never take the stage and speak, they're not going to find me. And so it's like, yeah, the message comes, and McNeil got me because I was like, and what do I need to know to get into corporate? And she said, keep serving the people, keep serving people, and it'll come together. And so what I found over the last 6 months or so is that I got a piece here, and I got a piece here, and I got a piece here, until like I remember a call about 2 or 3 weeks ago when everything hit, and it was like, boom, here's the plan. Here's your brand. Here's what you sell. Here's this. Here's that. And you know what? It was perfect in that moment, but it's still not perfect because as I speak to people, then I'm like, oh, I got to tweak this here. And they really need it this way. And I wanted to teach it this way. So if you start doing the work, Christian or not, if you start doing the work, stuff starts showing up. That momentum gets behind you and everything starts coming together, and you start getting rid of the things that don't make sense and really hyper focusing on those things that are going to get you and move the needle.
No, that makes sense.
Let the church say amen.
There it is. There it is. Pass the plate. Pass the plate.
Pass the plate.
So, you know what? I was thinking about, like, how did I give myself permission? And I remember this quick story. I used to always feel guilty about praying for things, right? Because I was never praying for, like, what I think are the world's real problems. Like, yo, there's a kid.
But if it matters to you, it is.
But hold on, let me add some context. Let me show you, because I think it makes sense. Because people say, man, I'm gonna, I would talk to somebody about my goals and say, I'm gonna pray for you about that. I'm like, dude, there's a kid that's being assaulted right now.
Right.
Don't waste that prayer on me. Put that on them, right? Pray for them. If there's a kid that needs a better life, or there's a woman that's being abused, or there's a man that's gonna commit suicide because of what's going on in his family, like, give them those prayers. My prayers are in addition to all of my blessings I already got, right? So the mindset that I took on to give myself permission was, God got bigger problems to worry about than what I'm praying about. So I just need to do it, and He'll help me if I get lost.
Yeah,
right.
But that you're saying the same thing that I said. Yeah.
But it removed me having to wait on permission from a divine power or my parents or anybody else. It's like they got bigger stuff to worry about than my goals. Let me just get to working on them. And if I run into an issue, then I go with that.
Well,
right?
I'm the oldest of 8. And my parents are the reason I'm a person of faith. And with 8 kids, and we were all stair steps, all of us stair steps. Then they had, you can't pay attention to all 8 all the time. So, it's time to do homework, and I'm working on, complex, calculus and trig, and my baby sister is learning how to draw her numbers. Like, you can't do it all, right? But a certain part of it does come for you. However, God is like our parent. Like, whatever your God is, I see God as being a loving parent. And so if my parent sees me over there and I'm struggling trying to put it together, yeah, they're going to show up. Hold on, baby girl. No. Don't do that. I see that I don't want you to waste your time. I don't want you to, hurt yourself over here trying to figure this out. Let me help you out, and can still do for the other ones. He's still got that too. But here's the other thing. The way that I look at it is, I don't want to, it's hard for Christians a lot of time to want to pray for monetary stuff, but even the Bible says money answers all things. Like, you need it. It's a resource. And the thing is, when I'm helping the person that you talked about trying to commit suicide, they may be ready to commit suicide because they needed that one little tidbit of business advice that they couldn't get anywhere else, that I could have gave them, that could have turned it around. Because most divorces and most family issues and life issues have to do with money. And as a business owner, if your business is sinking and you can't figure out how to pay payroll, you might be ready to go off yourself. So if God blesses me with the knowledge or the resources that I need to put my stuff out in the world, it's solving the problem. And that problem may have the problem that I'm solving for the person I'm solving may just be the one of many that they have, but solve some of their other problems if I do what I'm supposed to do. So that's one of the ways that I look at that. So
No,
and
I think
it may be that I naturally am a giver. And so it may be that if I pray to God, Lord, I need my business to look like this. That ends up helping other people because I'm hiring other people, but it also gives me the resources to go and help that kid who's hungry at the end of the street and be like, I brought you some extra, groceries just show up. They ain't even got to know it's me. Groceries show up.
no, that makes sense. I think we'll end on that analogy of God got a lot of kids, and you can't wait until he give you attention to start doing your homework. You got to start doing your homework. And if you run into an issue, he'll
He's right
stop
there.
over there and come over. But you can't say, I'm only going to work on my homework when he watching. Nah, get your butt to work. Get on these stages,
if
start
you take
practicing
a
your
step,
speeches.
I was always told if you take a step, then he's taking a step with you. If you're going in the wrong direction, he's gonna move you. But his steps are so much bigger than yours. So get to moving. Because you got a lot of making up to do before he takes his one. He gotta know which direction. Where are we going?
No, that makes sense. I get it. So, Nichole, how can they find more out about you and how to work with you?
Okay, so being that I've said it that I'm transitioning, I do what I do for speakers and business owners looks a little bit different than what I do for like my corporate clients. I've packaged them all under Prosperous Pivots. So by the time this comes out, the website will reflect that. So you can go to prosperouspivots.com, or the site right now is NicholeSheltonCoach.com. So you can do either. And it'll have on there Prosperous Pivots is where everything will live. But right now, for the speakers and individuals, go to NicholeSheltonCoach.com. And my old site is still up to NicholeCompton.com. So either one. And just remember it has an H. It has an H because being the oldest of 8, my legal name is Kaniko, which is K-A with the Nicole and the Nichole. Everybody else got Shannon and Brittany, Charles, Justin, Jasmine. They got the normal names. I was the guinea pig. So it has an H, but at least you don't have to remember all 9 letters.
No, that makes sense. Well, hey, thank you so much. This has been really good. I mean, a lot of lessons for the speaker that wants to create a product and for the business owner that wants to become a speaker. I think there's a lot of gems in here. And the main gem is you got permission granted from Nichole Compton, at least.
Get started.
At least from Nichole, you got permission from an attorney to get started.
I back my stuff up. You got permission to get started. And you also know if you ever need any help from this way, I stand behind what I say. So you need that encouragement. You need that keynote speaker. You need a workshop. You need a course. I probably have it because I've been doing this for 25 years. So I'm here.
Perfect.